Hi there, and welcome to the Eurogamer Newscast. And this week we're talking about video game adaptations in the wake of the brilliant The Last of Us, which everybody is talking about. Joining me this week, it's Eurogamer's news reporting team, as ever, Ed Nightingale.
Hello.
Victoria Kennedy.
Hello.
And I'm Tom Phillips. And yeah, if you haven't been living under a rock, you will know that The Last of Us is out now. It's just broadcast its third episode for us at the moment, and it's hugely critically acclaimed, especially that third episode, and we'll be talking a bit about that in a bit. And there's definitely a lot of conversation that this is sort of a new high watermark for video game adaptations and TV or movies. And there's some people have been saying this is sort of the first really good one, but I think that there's others already that have been made that are worth recommending. There's also been quite a few made that perhaps are not worth your time on. But yeah, Ed, do you believe that The Last of Us is the first really great one? Have there been others that you've seen in the past that you've really enjoyed?
I don't think it's the first great one. I think that there is more, I guess, prestige about this because they are trying to make this a big prestige TV show. So there's a massive budget behind it. And it's a bit more serious compared to, say, something like Sonic or Detective Pikachu or something like that. That's clearly a sort of animation for children. This is clearly going for that much more mature, adult, serious kind of vibe. So I think because of that, people are just taking it more seriously, or at least the critics are taking it more seriously. For me, it's definitely up there. I think it is one of the best. I mean, I'm sure Victoria will talk about it more because Victoria is our The Last of Us expert. But I have very much enjoyed watching it, and that third episode is pretty spectacular. But yeah, I think there have been other good ones in the past.
What have you really enjoyed?
I mean, there have been a few that have been a bit sort of quite fun, even though they're bad.
They're the best ones.
Yeah. Things like the very first Resident Evil movie with Mila Jovovich, I remember wasn't really that close to the game, and my residing memory is the bit with the lasers going through the eye, which was horrible.
How old were you
but
when
that's
you watched
definitely
that?
stuck in my mind. Oh, for about 12. Maybe. Actually, I can't remember when that came out. Or like Silent Hill, I saw that quite recently with Sean Bean.
God, I remember that
actually
coming
okay.
I worked at the cinema at the time as a student job, and I remember coming out and watching it because, you know, that was what you just did. You just watched everything that came out, and it was okay. I'm not a big Silent Hill fan, though. It was just an okay horror film with a lot of fog.
The thing I remember most about that film is Sean Bean's character. And I won't give away any spoilers, but there's a particular reason I remember that character because it's unlike other Sean Bean characters.
I think that gives it away. But yeah.
Or does it?
Does it?
What is Sean Bean famous for?
I think what was interesting about... Because I watched that quite recently, and I hadn't played the game. I have now since played a little bit of Silent Hill 2. But because of that, I didn't have that comparison point. And I think that is often the sticking point with these sorts of things is how close is it to the game? Because if it's too far away, the fans say, oh, well, it's nothing like the games and it's too different. And if it's too close, it's, well, what was the point in this? Because I could just play the game instead. So I think there's a real balancing act between... And this is something I think The Last of Us gets right, between taking the essence of the game, but still putting something different into it and telling maybe a slightly different story. And that's one thing I really like about The Last of Us is that it feels like it is the essence of the game. They've really got the vibe in terms of the set design and the music and all those sorts of things. But then the story they're telling is slightly tweaked so that it works better for TV, which is what this is. You know, you should work for the medium that you are adapting to. So I think that gets it right. I think other ones that also get that right are actually the Sonic movie was really fun. The first one was maybe a little bit too far away from the games, but that's because it's ultimately Sonic in the real world. which you don't expect and don't think would work. But I feel like they really lean into that and just make it a comedy, which actually becomes really fun. The second Sonic movie has way more Sonic references in it, so I actually preferred it. But it still has that mix of fantasy and reality, cartoon and real world that for me kind of really works. And I think Detective Pikachu did that really well as well.
Oh, I love that.
That was one of the first times that I'd seen sort of Pokemon just roaming around, and what would the real world look like if we literally lived with Pokemon? You know, the story wasn't always amazing, but I think that essence of it, I think they did really well.
The opening bit where they're kind of showing like how Pokemon and people kind of cohabitate in this world or whatever, and my daughter absolutely lost it when there were Squirtles helping fight fire with the firemen. She was just like,
it's very cute.
She's like, we have
There's
to
a
get
lot of great stuff.
Yeah.
The weird licky tongue on the train, the
Mr. Mime. It's very
scary.
scary.
Ludicolo in the bar. I mean, all of these things, you know, if you ever wondered what these Pokemon would actually look like in the real world, they did a really good job of that. They showed a lot of it in the trailer. Actually, I remember watching that film and then thinking, I've seen
seen this
and
already.
that. Yeah. And the ending is just, there's just no logic to it whatsoever. And that is, you know, taking into account that it's a film about these
But did you
creatures.
Enjoy the ride to get there?
I enjoyed everything but like the last 10 minutes, and then it just made no sense. But Detective Pikachu is an interesting thing to talk about because it is an adaptation, right? And it is based pretty closely on a video game, Detective Pikachu, that came out on 3DS, which was good, and they adapted most of the story from it. But they made it work, well, up until the last 10 minutes. They made it work for the big screen. And of course, you know, everyone loves that film because of Ryan Reynolds and his sort of take on Detective Pikachu, giving him that personality. Going back to The Last of Us, Victoria, you've been doing our weekly recaps. So
Yes.
episode 3 kind of stands out because while the first 2 pretty much follow the games, the third one is a lot more of an original take. You don't see a lot of the events that episode 3 portrays if you play the game. And do you want to like talk a little bit about that and why it works so well? Because people seem to love this episode.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the credit there has to go also to the, gosh, sorry, my dog wants to play, has to go to the actors, because Frank and Bill, who are played by Murray Bartlett and Nick Offerman, they were so invested in their role and they gave a real beautiful, very human performance. I know that they are humans, but what I mean is like they brought the humanity to the performance, so they definitely need some credit.
They're not clickers, no.
They're definitely not clickers, no. For me, that episode, when I played the game, and I remember saying this whenever we were talking about what we're looking forward to in 2023, and I said that I love The Last of Us because of the stories of the people in that world. It's not about like fighting zombies and being a run and gun kind of person. Like, I love the narrative that is in this world, and I always felt really quite sad that in the game, Bill and Frank's story is really very miserable. It's not elaborated on in any way. That there are some like aspects that you might not even find because I'm trying not to give away any spoilers. I realize this is an old game now, but that there's a collectible in the game that you can easily miss, and then that is a note that you give to Bill, and he might not read it, kind of thing. So not only did they make sure that the story got told and gave these characters a voice, they also, I think, told it in a much, I want to say a better way. Like, I was really, really pleased with how that narrative played out, and I was expecting things to happen in the show that didn't. And I did write this in my sort of discussion piece on episode 3. There were some things that I was expecting and weren't there, and I assume they'll be implemented later and down the line. I obviously don't know yet, but I just love that, and I love the way that they use Bill and Frank's story and how it concluded. This is really hard not to do it with spoilers, my goodness. The final like message that Bill leaves to Joel in that episode is a really nice way of setting up kind of some Joel's motivations and outlooks, I suppose, and like it'll help. It will affect these main characters that in the game we're pretty much tied to. So it's quite good that they've managed to make this story about these two characters that were very overlooked in the game, but how they will still impact the narrative going forward, even though they're not going to be the focus in future episodes.
I think Bill sort of plays a similar role in the game in terms of a bit of a warning to Joel of if you push people away and isolate yourself, you're going to be miserable. But they sort of have a similar message. Again, when that's one of the things, similar message in the show, but through a slightly more positive lens, which I really liked.
I did also like the fact that even though, because I wrote this already, but Bill's section in the game is very much it's a stop in the road. It's where you go and like you learn how to make the nail bombs and things, and you kind of stock up your supplies a little bit. And I like the fact that in the show they also did show that that's where Joel and Ellie could stock up and get supplies, which is like I thought that was quite cool that they still had it as this place where they will get the resources and things that they need. I thought it was a nice element to keep.
I saw a tweet from someone that was saying, that actually they would love to have a sort of anthology series that is just lots of short stories in the world, and I quite like that. I think
that'd be really interesting.
This is like that because it's just one complete story in one episode, and as much as yes, we're following Joel and Ellie, it would be lovely to sort of see different sides of how have people coped with this apocalypse.
Yeah.
I think that is something the TV show has a really good way of showing that you can't do if you're playing as a character in a video game or a couple of characters. I looking at this episode, I've not seen it yet. I've only seen the first, but I really loved the opening of the first episode. You have that prologue with John Hannah as the mycology expert, and you see all of Sarah's day leading up to sort of where the game begins, and it's the mundane things, but it's the world building that comes with that. And it just helps build out the world. I'm interested to see how they fit in the Left Behind DLC into the story, but they could just do an entire episode flashback to that. It doesn't need to necessarily be part of the narrative. They could just be like, right, we're going to have Ellie do just reminisce at a certain point in the story, and we're going to show those scenes. And then I think when you...
Oh, sorry, I was going to say, with Frank and Bill's story, because it was told over 20 years, it's not just the present day, which I think also really benefited the narrative.
I could see season 2 opening with a lot of backstory on characters like Abby, and them using, space in the show that they didn't have in the game to show more of that. And they've now got a season 2, so we shall find out whenever they.
And everyone thinks Shannon Barrie is going to be Abby, and if they do, that would be such a good choice.
I've seen that speculation.
Seen Shannon Barrie? I watched her in the Wilds, and she was very good. So we shall see.
Yeah, I think that'd be a good choice. I think The Last of Us has, because there are adaptations which work well because they are creative and new, and then there are adaptations which work well because they are really honest and they follow the storytelling of the games to the letter. And I think The Last of Us charts the right path through that, and I think that is different for every game. So like Sonic, as you were mentioning, Ed, you probably don't want to do the story of the Green Hill Zone if you're doing as interesting as that might be.
There's not much story.
Well, I mean, I say this, but then I was going to turn to you and be like, Ed, you are like Sonic lore fan number one. Is there a story there that they could have adapted?
Well, every Sonic game is just Robotnik, and I will still call him Robotnik, not Eggman. Kind of just steals Sonic's friends and turns them into badniks, and then Sonic has to save them, and that's it. It's just a different variation on that. And then in later games, they go very off-piste and weird. So I guess with a character like Sonic in that kind of world, there's a bit more freedom to play around and do something a bit silly. Whereas The Last of Us, I think, is... Well, they still do play around with it, I guess, but it's much more serious and has a much more strict narrative to follow.
Yeah, I think with The Last of Us, even though they are making tweaks to the narrative, we do know that it will... It's like following a very flexible framework, I think. It's still got the sort of the core line of the story that they're telling. And so while they are veering off bits, they're still never going like so off piece that they can't come back and loop it into the story that people know from the game. And I'm pretty sure it'll conclude in the same way.
I'm curious where, if they are going to split season 2 and if they're going to split part 2 into 2 seasons, where they do the season break. Is it like perhaps quite an obvious one that's quite early in the game, or do they just literally cut it down the middle? And yeah, it'll be interesting to see. Okay, adaptation I really wanted to talk about is Arcane, because I think that that is a really good example of a storytelling thing which, as you were talking about, Victoria, just allows a story to exist in a world that already is there but isn't necessarily part of the game that it's based on. And for me, I didn't know League of Legends really at all. I knew what it was, but I never played a match, wasn't interested in the world, the lore, the characters, and yet all of those things came to life in this really beautiful animated show that came out, I think, in 2021 on Netflix. And there is another season coming, hopefully later this year. But it just used those characters and, paid homage to their main character traits and abilities in the game, but basically told a story that had the freedom to basically do what it wanted. I think the story is supposed to be something of a prequel to the games, so obviously they can't, go crazy with what they want to do, and like blow up the world. But although, it is a really, really good.
Okay.
Well, I'm just thinking, it is a really, really special adaptation, and for me, I watched it through, and I was just engrossed by the characters and the storytelling. And I immediately watched it again because it was so good.
Is the story that was told, or how much of it do you think was the way it was presented, in the sense that it's not like Arcane's not live action, is it? Is that I'm thinking about the right one, aren't I? It's the anime.
It's a really beautiful animation.
Yeah.
And
like, do you think that
the animation is just really fun to watch?
To the fact, like, to your enjoyment that it was presented in that style?
It's the characters and the storytelling. The characters that they show. It's not really a spoiler to say, because the marketing for the game shows the 2 sisters who are the protagonists, really, growing up. But when you start the series, you see them at a younger point in their lives, and you meet a lot of the characters who are part of the big narrative of the series several years before the main narrative really kicks off. And you just get this sense that you've known these characters all of their lives. You've sort of grown up with them a bit. You know where they're coming from because you've seen them as kids, and in quite an innocent. Well, there are bits of it that definitely aren't innocent, but in a more innocent setting before these people become the people that they are in the games, and they are as they all sort of get to certain points on the not the world stage, but like importance within this city that Arcane is set within. And I think, the way that those characters are built up, the way they're written, you understand all of their like impetuses, all of their narrative drives, and the way and the way that they all interact as the story unfolds is very, very interesting. And,
so will the next season follow the same characters?
Yeah,
the first, a whole new story.
The first season ended at a point where certainly you're expecting the show to pick up from there and probably expand the world out. I think the creators have said that the first season was very much about the city, but there is a whole world out there. And towards the end of the season, you start to get a bit more of a feel of maybe another city, another faction. You start to, the focus pulls out a bit more. So I would imagine we'll see some more bits of the world, but there's only a lot of characters from the first season that everyone who watched it and loved it is very eager to catch up with.
It reminds me.
Sorry.
Oh, no, after you.
I was going to say Netflix are definitely on a positive run at the moment. They've had that. Castlevania I haven't watched, but I've just been reminded of as another animation that I think people have really enjoyed watching. There's obviously Cyberpunk that was decent. I didn't finish it, but what I watched I really liked, and I think it's because, again, it's got that balance of there are Easter eggs for people who know the game, and just little things like the little sound effects and UI bits and pieces like crop up in it, which is really nice if you play the game. But it tells a very specific, succinct story, which is something the game didn't do. So I kind of really enjoyed that about the anime. So that's a really good adaptation. And then there's The Witcher as well, which has obviously been a big deal for them. So yeah, Netflix are definitely on a good run, I'd say.
Yeah, they haven't cancelled any video game related shows as
Which
far
is
as
a
I'm aware of,
surprise.
on like some of their other stuff.
I've not actually thought about that. Yeah, go video
Just,
games. And it's got the Tomb Raider anime coming to it.
Yeah.
Oh
Are
no,
you
it
excited
had the
for that?
Resident Evil one that got cancelled. So
Oh yeah, it did, didn't it?
I just remembered that one, which I didn't.
I don't
watch.
think any of us here watched it, but I remember a certain plot point being talked about, and it just seemed like the worst thing in the world. Which is when that girl talks about watching
It came up in our quiz.
Disney porn, I think.
last year.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it did.
Zootopia.
Yeah.
Oh,
Zootopia
that's the
porn.
only clip of it I've seen.
I've also seen them
And I
discussing.
do not wish to see anymore.
I saw quite a few clips. There were other ones of them discussing like SpongeBob SquarePants and things. It was all very. Couldn't quite decide on the direction its narrative wanted to, or the tone it wanted to go with its narrative, I gather. But I've only seen clips, so. But Tomb Raider, I'm excited about.
So what is that story going to tell?
Now, I don't actually have Netflix, so this is something I will have to look into a little bit further. But the Tomb Raider anime, whenever it does release, because I know it's still in the works, is going to be following, I'm pretty sure, the story of Lara after Shadow of the Tomb Raider.
Oh.
Right.
I'm pretty sure. So
Is that
it'll
the
be-
last one of the old games before the reboot?
No, that's the last one of the reboot.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I think I'm remembering this right. So that's the one, from this most recent trilogy, which came out in 2018.
For some reason, I thought Rise of the Tomb Raider was the last one, but that was the middle one.
That was the middle one. That was
Yes.
number 2 of the 3. But yeah,
That
no,
was
as,
the last one I
as,
She
played.
rises and then she becomes a shadow.
yes. But as you guys know, I'm very fond of Lara, and I will watch anything and everything with her in it. So, which I can tell you about my favorite video game adaptation if you would like me to.
Is it a Tomb Raider one?
Imagine if I just threw like a massive curveball now and said something completely different.
Well, it
But-
might be The Last of Us now. I don't know.
Oh no, I am very much enjoying The Last of Us. But if I ever need like, if I'm ever having just like a really rubbish day and I just want to ping something on, even if it's in the background, I will always go to Angelina Jolie's outing as Lara Croft in the first Tomb Raider. I absolutely love that film. I just think it's brilliant, and it's not brilliant because it's good, but it's brilliant because it's like
Because it's bad.
It's that. Like, I just love in that film we have like the American Angelina Jolie playing a British Lara Croft with a British Daniel Craig playing an American Alex West. And then they've only got Ace Rimmer in there as well as the butler Winston. Like, that's amazing.
Chris Barrie.
Chris
Yeah.
Barrie. I'm so gutted that in that, like, I was waiting for Lara to ask him to smoke her a kipper at some point, and she never did. And I think that was such a wasted opportunity because that would have just been brilliant if she had done that. But that film has everything from the games in the sense of, like, you know, it's got her dual pistols, it's got her little hot pants, she's on a motorbike, they go to these far-flung places with these ludicrous temple designs, and it's just wonderful.
I mean,
And
she
that
is
is.
very, very well cast in that role. Like, nobody else could play Lara in that way.
Yeah, she's definitely
until
got that.
the more recent film, but yeah.
Yeah, I think Alicia Vikander did a really good job of doing like the rebooted version of Lara Croft, but for sort of classic Lara Croft, Angelina Jolie was so well cast. And I just love that film. And like I'll be that really annoying person. If we ever sit down and watch it together, I will like be that person talking along and reciting all the lines with it. So it's even got U2 doing the soundtrack or bits of the soundtrack. Like it's the most like...
And this is why you're recommending it? Or...
Well, no, but like it's just like such a sort of random concoction of stuff, but I just love it.
I think it works as a franchise which you can look at and think, oh yeah, that I can see why they're making a film of that. Not only was it insanely popular with a really strong lead character, an elite character that was, let's face it, designed for the male gaze, so you're going to get men to watch this film. But it also is just, that franchise is based on Saturday afternoon matinee, like Indiana Jones style adventures. Uncharted, another good example. I wasn't shocked to see that Sony wanted to do a film version of that, and they did.
They did.
And now they're doing another. So
Well, they've called it a franchise, so I enjoyed the
yeah,
Uncharted film for different reasons. When the Uncharted film came out, I really liked the fact that it was last February, actually soon after I started here. But it was last February, and it was just the world had some very bleak news going on, and it was really dark. And I remember going to the cinema to watch Uncharted, and I just loved the fact that there was some fairly easy plot and like lovely set pieces. And so I appreciated Uncharted for that time that it released. But,
and Tom Holland, which
Still yet to see it.
is a lot of people's gaze.
He's a winner.
I mean, I have nothing against Tom Holland, but every time I see him, I just see Tom Holland. I definitely did not see Nate Drake there. I think they cast Chloe really well, Sophia Ali, who actually, now I think about it, is also in The Wilds with Shannon Berry, who people say should play Abby. So there you go.
I've also, thinking of really bad ones, I've also just remembered the Doom film with the Rock,
with Rosamund Pike,
which is
when
so
they go-
bad.
and is it Carl Urban? Is it Carl Urban?
It's so bad. I just remember there's one bit right at the end where it suddenly switches to first person, and it's like this first person action scene, and it's like you're playing the game, and I was like, oh, this is quite good. The rest of it's awful.
See, if they'd done an Uncharted like they did that Nate Fillion sort of fan-made one, that would have been amazing. And they actually bits where they would like pan over his shoulder, so he jumped out the window, and then it was like you were going into gameplay.
Another really bad one is the Monster Hunter film, which is so bad.
Never seen
because it's
anything of
just it's like Mila Jovovich and this group of like military grunts who get transported in a tornado to another world of Monster Hunter, and I'm like, what? It has so little to do with the game. It's just using the name of it, and okay, there's a bow and arrow and a hunter, but and some monsters, but it's so bad.
I just remember lots of her just running across fairly boring plains of land.
And it's the typical thing of she should have died about 30 seconds into the film, and yet miraculously there's 2 hours worth of this. It's really bad.
I completely forgot that film existed and came out, and then we actually covered it a little bit on Eurogamer, and there was a controversy about a racist joke in the film that got pulled before it. I believe it got pulled before it was released in the West.
I did not know that.
You can read about it on Eurogamer, but that just looked terrible. I'd forgotten it even came out. Go on.
Did either of you watch The Witcher as well on Netflix?
I've still not got around to watching it.
I don't have
my
Netflix.
favourite.
So
You're not a fan, Ed?
I am a fan in that I enjoyed it, and I enjoy Henry Cavill.
Of course.
I much preferred the first season to the second, because I think what's interesting about the Witcher adaptation is that it's clearly come about because the game has become so popular, or at least The Witcher 3. But the TV show is very much based on the books. So I went back and read the books before I watched the show, or at least the first couple of books. And the first couple of books are a series of short stories. And the first series, every episode relates to one of those stories. And I really like that because it's got that anthology kind of feel. And like, what's great about The Witcher is seeing Geralt witchering. Like, I want to see witchering. I want to see him out, like, stalking monsters and battling them and being a witcher. And there's quite a bit of that in the first season, which is great. And then the second season is still based on one of the later books, but it's one of the novels. And it's just a much more sort of longer, series-long story about Geralt and Ciri, and I kind of don't care as much about that. It sort of becomes a bit more political between elves and magicians and whatever else. And what's great about Geralt as a character is that he's very much in the middle of it all, and he has shades of grey, and he's not really good or evil. He sort of works on his own plane, but I just want to see him being a Witcher, and there's just not enough of that in the second series. It just focuses on other stuff that I'm much less interested in. Yeah, I kind of... I just want a series focused very much on Geralt.
Will you keep watching with the cast change?
Probably yes.
Okay.
Because I'm a sucker for it and I'll watch it. I watched the first 2 episodes of Blood Origins, which is the new miniseries, and it has zero to do with anything that relates to the games or the books or anything.
I did
And
see
do not watch it. It's really
some
bad.
very
That really
interesting
just
reviews on
came
that.
out, and
Yeah,
I'm
Michelle
not
Yeoh's
sure
great,
coming
but
out. It came out Christmas Day. I'm not sure that was.
I
the
watched
right
it with my
time.
family, and we were all just sat there like, "What is this?"
Like, is that what people want to watch from Christmas Day? It's like, no, I don't want to watch It's a
No.
Wonderful Life. I want to watch a prequel to this nerdy fantasy show.
With a terrible script.
Yeah, that to me just felt like Netflix wanted the franchise and wanted the spin-off, and then I don't know why they released it at Christmas. I've not heard much good about it.
Well, The Witcher's come out every Christmas, or at least in December. So it was them
Trying to
sticking
replace
with the
it,
Christmas release. Yeah.
but on Christmas Day,
Nah.
really?
All right, question for you guys then. We obviously have loads of video game adaptations in the works. Which one are you looking forward to the most?
Mario, because it'll probably be awful, but I'll enjoy it.
That's the
Oh,
obvious one, because that to me looks like one that is very, or at least, well, I guess there's a lot of references in it, but it feels like it's quite close to the games. I don't feel like they're going very far away from them.
I look at it almost like as a parody, right? And you sort of have to when you can tell that Seth Rogen's he's just Seth Rogen. He's not Donkey Kong.
Yeah.
And Mario is going to be Chris Pratt, and it's got that kind of humor as well. It's it's slightly self-referential. People know the material and the world so well that I think they're going to have some fun with it. So when I say it's going to be awful, I don't actually think that. I think it will be. I think it'll be an enjoyable watch, and probably not much more than that. It's going to be very lightweight but funny.
I definitely
And
think
that's fine.
it's Illumination, and I think it's very much going to be like the Minions films, but reskinned with Mario. Like
Yeah.
even from the trailers we've seen, it's very obvious that it is that studio. I think.
Yeah, the penguins getting melted by Bowser. I mean, that could be from Despicable Me. So.
Yeah.
You shrunk the
I'm
moon.
intrigued to see how like Gran Turismo can be turned into a film.
They're doing the live action. Well, it's live action, but they're doing the story of the guy who played Gran Turismo as a kid and actually became a racing driver, which is a true story. So it's
which could be
based
quite
on
interesting. And they're doing Horizon, aren't they? Or is that a TV show rather than a film?
that. Yeah,
It's a TV show.
Because that I think has got a lot of potential, but I think it will hinge very much on who plays Aloy.
I loved your picture that you actually put up of Tom, of the girl from Game of Thrones.
You know nothing, Jon Snow.
Yeah, that one.
Yeah.
What's her
Yeah.
name? Anyway, I now just like whenever I picture Aloy now, I picture her.
Because they're together in real life, aren't they?
They are.
Yeah, Kit Harington and
Rose Leslie.
There
that's
you go.
it.
Yes. I think she'd be the perfect Aloy. So hopefully Sony, hurry up and make that.
I think it'd be quite good as well. Like the rumors that we've seen about that one saying that it's also going to cover like the fall of humanity and seeing more of that. Like I know you see it, the fall of humanity in like video logs or whatever in Horizon, but I think that'd be quite interesting to see Elizabeth, that one. So I think it'll be
That seems to me a more grounded story that's easier to tell in a TV show on a significantly smaller budget, where it's not, like robot dinosaurs every single shot.
Yes. I'm trying to think what other ones there are. God of War as well. Twisted Metal. which
Basically,
everyone thinks is
every
coming out this
Sony
year.
franchise
Yeah.
is being turned into a TV show or a film. And maybe if Xbox had more, we'd be seeing more Halo TV style. We'd be seeing Marcus
Halo
Phoenix's, but
Did not
instead
do
of
well.
Master Chief.
I mean, Halo is getting a second season, so
What more of him can they show at this point? We've seen his head, we've seen his bum.
close above the ankle.
Maybe on that note, we'll leave it there. we can dream. Thank you if you made it this far. It's much appreciated. Thank you, Ed and Victoria. Where can people find you on Twitter, Ed?
You can find me at ed_knights.
And Victoria?
I am Little Chop Shop Gal.
And I'm at Tom Phillips EG. Thanks for watching, everyone. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.
See you then.